Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting, the May 15th, 2025 meeting of the City of Nashua Planning Board. Could we get a roll call, please? Mr. Hirsch?
Mayor Donchis, Mike Peterson, Bob Bollinger,
Here.
Adam Varley,
Here.
Maggie Harper, Dan Hudson,
Here.
Scott Leclaire, Larry Hirsch here, Cameron Green,
Here.
Patricia Klee.
Here.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes of the May 1st, 2025 Planning Board meeting. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review those minutes and is willing to make a motion for acceptance or acceptance with amendment? Mr. Green?
I'd like to motion to accept the minutes as written.
All right, motion by Mr. Green. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Varley. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, communications. Sam or Connor, anything we should know about that we weren't alerted to earlier, or?
Yes, just that one item. I did send out an email, but it was late in the afternoon relative to a letter from the applicant's counsel for the 24 East Otterson project.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, report of chair, committee, and liaison. I know Ms. Harper is not here this evening. I don't have anything. Any other board members have anything to report tonight? No? All right. Before we get going this evening, I do just want to read the planning board procedure for the record. The procedure of the meeting is as follows. After the legal notice of each conditional, special use permit, site plan, or subdivision plan is read by the chair, the board will determine if that application is complete and ready for the board to take jurisdiction. The public hearing will begin, at which time the applicant or representative will be given time to present an overview and description of their project. The applicant shall speak to whether or not they agree with the recommended staff stipulations. The board will then have an opportunity to ask questions of the applicant or staff. The chair will then ask for testimony from the audience. First, anyone wishing to speak in opposition or with concern to the plan may speak. Please come forward to the microphone, state your name and address for the record. This would be the time to ask questions that you may have regarding the plan. Next, public testimony will come from anyone wishing to speak in favor of the plan. The applicant will then be allowed a rebuttal period, at which time they shall speak to any issues or concerns raised by prior public testimony. After this is completed, the public hearing will end and the board will resume the public meeting, at which time the board will deliberate and vote on the application before us. The board asks that both sides keep their remarks to the subject at hand and try not to repeat what has already been stated. Above all, the board wants to be fair to everyone and make the best possible decision based on the testimony presented and all applicable approval criteria established in the Nashua Revised Ordinances. Thank you for your interest and courteous attention, and if you would please turn off your cell phones or set them to silent mode. So we'd like to move along, and I would just like to state I am going to change the order of the agenda just a little bit tonight. There are a few aldermanic referrals that I think for expediency it would be in the board's best interest to take care of at the onset of our meeting tonight. Before we move on to those, are all members of the board able to sit on this, or Mr. Varley, did you?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As to the aldermanic referrals, I'd like to recuse myself.
Very well. For the record, Mr. Varley is recused, and we still have a quorum. Sam, we have 4 specific aldermanic referrals tonight, or ordinances, along with referral from the Board of Aldermen for amended petition for street discontinuance. All of these actual 5 referrals tonight are related to, I guess collectively, we'll just call it the Mohawk Tannery property. Sam, would you like to give kind of a brief overview of where we stand and how these sort of are related to what the board has already approved with relation to the site plan?
Certainly. So very broadly speaking, all 5 of these items before you this evening effectuate various aspects of the approval that you granted back in June of '24. It doesn't change the approved plan in any way, but it kind of ties up some loose ends that are necessary in order for that plan and the associated subdivisions to truly be effective in achieving what they were approved to do. If you have any more technical questions, we can get into that, and also the attorney for the project, Mr. Brad Westgate, is here as well and can speak to finer details.
Okay, thank you, Sam. Questions from the board for either staff or Attorney Westgate? Okay. Seeing none at this time, rather than taking them individually, I think we could entertain a motion for referral of, you might want to state them by name for the record. So we've got a R25, 159, 160, 161, 166, as well as the amended petition for street discontinuance. So I think just, if the board is so inclined, making a motion to approve all 5 collectively, again, just calling them out, though, specifically in your motion, I think would be appropriate. Is any member of the board willing to make a motion regarding a favorable referral from the planning board on those items? Alderman Klee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to at this time make a motion for a favorable approval of R25-159, R-25-160, R-25-161, R-25-166, and the amended petition for the street discontinuance regarding a portion of the Veterans Memorial Parkway. Mr. Durfee, do I need to actually read what each of those resolutions are, or was giving the numbers sufficient?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
So as I just read, that is my motion, sir.
Very good, thank you. Motion by Alderman Klee. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you. Okay. We'll begin our regular cases now. Mr. Varley is going to rejoin us. So, first item on the agenda under old business site plan, case 824-0205, property located at 24 East Otterson Street. Just for the record, the board previously opened this case on April 3rd of this year. Tabled it, or continued it, I guess I should say, for a number of reasons. But is any member of the board willing to make a motion to just reopen the matter or remove from the table? Mr. Varley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. As to case number 825-0058, I would make a motion to remove that case from the table.
All right, motion by Mr. Varley. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. I do want to turn things over to the applicant, just as a quick refresher for the board. We did ask the applicant to come back with some additional information, kind of the major bullet points. They're in the staff report, but just to read them for the record. Basically kind of look at some alternative concepts for access, provide a turning movement plan, provide further details on trash pickup, and provide a shade analysis. So I think those were the major points. Obviously, I would like to turn things over to the applicant, speak on those matters. But if you would, sir, just please introduce yourself again for the record.
Perfect. Jim Hanley, president of SEC and Associates in Plastow, New Hampshire. So I think I'll just kind of walk through. You mentioned that April 3rd was our last planning board hearing. You guys provided some input on the project. We went back to the drawing board. It took us about a month, give or take, but we got a set of plans back to the town on May 5th. And basically, the big items were in that modification, We provided an updated design standard and waiver request to address one of the items that came up at the hearing, which was residential use above commercial use. So we included that. We provided updated site plans, drainage report, shadow study, a written response to each engineering comment, as well as updated architectural plans. We got yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, might have been earlier than that, we got an engineering review letter from the city. We've taken a look at that. I think we made a pretty decent dent in it. There's still a handful of items that I'd characterize as mostly housekeeping stuff and details that we can work through. And we don't take exception to any of the comments in the letter. So I'll just kind of recap and walk through the modifications that we made to address the last hearing. So as always, when we approach a project like this, there's always some general utility notes, construction details that we need to take care of and clean up to address engineering. We feel like we've done most of that. One of the bigger discussion points last time around was access. I don't know if we can show the updated site plan, or even go down one. Yeah, I think it would be good. Yeah, that's good. So we took some time and reassessed the traffic flow based on the conversation that we did have with you at the last hearing, and we've made a modification of that first floor and the access and egress into and out of the garage. You recall that previously we had I believe it was a 16-foot wide door that was for both entrances and exits off of Dearborn Street. We took a fresh look, and basically what we've done is we've modified the access to allow an entrance from Dearborn and entrance only from Dearborn. And then we have a dedicated one-way exit from the parking garage onto East Otterson Street, and that's on the bottom-facing facade along East Otterson Street. This resulted in the loss of 2 parking spaces. So we were in front of you last month or the month before with 32 parking spaces. We now have 2 parking spaces, but I think we have a better plan and more maneuverability into and out of the parking garage. We've also provided a detailed turning analysis for a passenger car coming in, exiting, and entering and exiting the parking garage, and that's on the detail sheets and the site development plans. There's also a little bit of discussion about a trash compactor. So, how we're gonna deal with trash. So, the site development plans or the architectural plans show essentially a trash room, and that trash room has a compactor with 2-yard containers that are on wheels. So there'll be the compactor, the containers, as well as 2 additional bins. The plan at this point, we've talked to a provider. We've discussed the size of the project. They indicated that typically with this setup, it's twice a week that they would service. Obviously, that's an estimate. We're not live. We don't know what that is. It could be once a week. It could be 3 times a week. If we have to modify it, we'll modify it as we move forward. The plan would be to wheel the two bins down through Dearborn Street to East Otterson, load the vehicle, and then put the bins back. So we had a general discussion with the providers, and it was less than a 5-minute cycle time. By the time you stop, you go in, you grab the bins, you bring them out, you load them, you put the bins back, you take the truck out. Generally speaking, that's going to be about 5 minutes. Typically, and based on what we know now, that will happen twice a week. We would assume that we would do that in the morning, but we're more than happy to coordinate times with the town that work best for that specific area. On sheet C, I think C4 shows it the best. There was also a lot of conversation about the intersection with Dearborn and East Otterson and how we propose to provide a crosswalk. We took another look at this. We reconsidered based on your comments as well as the engineering department's comments, and essentially designed this to not come across right outside the front door of the building and cross through a crosswalk, but instead crossing East Otterson, Dearborn rather, and then providing a flared bump out or curb extension. So these curb extensions have been designed to provide accessible ramps, accessible crosswalks. The roadway is currently one way there, and we think that this will, it'll actually reduce the width from 28 feet down to 16 feet. I believe that's something we coordinated with engineering, and it's going to improve both safety for pedestrians and motorists with the ultimate goal of reducing speeds in that area there. In addition to that, we provided a shadow study. The architect provided a shadow study where they looked at basically daylight hours on January 15th, June 15th, and September 15th. That information has been provided in the packet. And then in addition to that, we really didn't have too many more modifications to the plan. One thing I will point out is behind the building where we have the essentially the green space. We did get a comment the day before, give or take, we met last, from the fire department that wanted some access back there. So what we're proposing, I believe it's a 5-foot, can't see it, 4-foot paver walkway, so we still maintain it as impervious. But that was one comment that the Nashua Fire Department had that we were able to address. So with that, there was a handful of real minor detail stuff that we worked through, and we intend on addressing the final comments here from engineering, but really don't take any exception with any of the comments that we provide. And with that, if I can answer any questions, I will be happy to do so.
Thank you. Questions from the board at this time? None? Okay. Maybe just for Mr. Hudson, engineering's general thought on sort of that bump out that's been provided, given the context of location and other items that were brought up. I guess if you have any general thoughts you wanted to offer on that, as well as the revised access configuration, I think your technical expertise would be appreciated in those areas. But in that way, if you have anything, if you want to stay for a moment, just if you need to rebut or add to anything Mr. Hudson says, that might be helpful. So.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So engineering has reviewed this revised site plan. One of the things that we wanted to accomplish to improve safety in this area was to have those bump outs added that will reinforce the one-way pattern. Currently, we're aware that people do drive the wrong way on that portion of the roadway. So that'll, excuse me, sorry. That'll narrow that up and provide the shorter crossing there. So that's something that we're looking for to be added in our last round of comments, and that's been added, so we appreciate that. Most of the rest of the comments are kind of cleanup sort of stuff I was just described. We are seeking some modifications to the drainage design that we provided a sketch, kind of what we're looking for there. But they were on the right track with trying to modify the drainage to accommodate the new design of the bump outs. We do, given the concerns with the safety of the intersection, we would be recommending that this intersection be converted to an all-way stop. That's irregardless of this application. I think it warrants that anyway. So that's something that we will work with the Ward Alderman to see if that's something that can proceed forward. I believe it's a Board of Alderman action. So we're seeking the applicant's accommodation of that if that's moves forward and gets approved ultimately. because we believe that would help, given the confusion that there occurs at that intersection, given the existing configuration, so. I think that kind of summarizes. I'd be happy to address any questions about any specific comments we have in the memo, should the board have any.
I appreciate the additional context and explanation, Mr. Hudson.
Sorry, I missed access. Relative to access,
Oh.
I know there was a discussion in the last meeting about Dearborn Street, and that not being a great location for, comings and goings to the first-story parking area in the building. So this pattern with a one-way in off of that street and one-way out on East Artisan, I think that's certainly an improvement from a movement capacity. We would like to see trash pickup occur on East Artisan. I mean, if you're gonna wheel trash containers out, it seems like that's the better street to do that on. So if that's feasible to be done, that's what we recommend there. But the overall configuration of adding the exit driveway or entrance, I guess, on East Artisan, we also believe is an improvement, safety-wise, in this area.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Did you have anything to add to supplement that, or?
I don't.
You think, okay. Mr. Varley, please.
Yeah, one quick follow-up question, and I apologize if you already addressed this and I missed it, but with the reconfiguration of the in-out, did you end up losing any spaces?
We did. We lost 2 spaces.
Two
So we
spaces.
went from 32, which was in front of you last time, to 30.
Right, okay, thank you.
Other questions from the board for the applicant at this time? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your testimony this evening. What I would like to do now, open it up to public comment, if you'd like. We're going to start with folks that wish to speak in opposition or with concern. I would just like to reiterate, all letters have been received. They're part of the packet, so there's certainly no need to reread your letter verbatim, but if you want to touch on some of the major points, feel free. The floor is yours. If you just want to introduce yourself for the record, please.
I do have photographs that I'd like to put to a board, show what I'm speaking about, if that's possible.
Were they the photographs that were included in our packet? No? Okay. Is,
Something came out about the sidewalks just now, and I'd like to address that.
if you'd like to, Sam, first of all, is it okay to accept the photographs into the record? given
Yes.
that certain-
I have 6 sets for each one, yeah.
Okay, certainly, please.
My name is Norman Wren. I'm the owner of 8 East Artisan Street property. I have sidewalk concerns. Please forgive me, I'm not very good at public speaking. My mother said I'm not no Carolyn Livet. So, the problem I see with the project is the parking. They have 30 parking spots, they have 40 units. There are no sidewalks on the north side of Artisan Street on the east end. There is one between Pond Street and Harbor Ave, but as you can see in the photographs, they're parked on all the time. They are never, ever plowed during the wintertime. Okay. There is no sidewalk between western entrance of my property and Main Street, northern side of Artisan Street. There is a sidewalk on the northern side between Artisan Street entrance, which ends at the entrance of Dearborn Street. However, there's a problem. That sidewalk and part of the road is on my property. In this logistic society, I have a problem with people crossing across there onto my property. Right? If you approve that, and if you can see in that diagram on the screen right now, that sidewalk goes across my property. Right? If I were to put a property marker, granite property marker there, and put private property signs along there, there's no way they can cross that. And that's the only way I can protect my property rights. Right? If they cross that and they go down that sidewalk, they're not going anywhere, because when they get to the other end of my property, the sidewalk stops. It does not go to Main Street. I don't know where they're walking to. They're gonna have to walk on the road. So they can't walk to Main Street and they can't walk to Harbor Ave. Where are these 10-plus cars that don't have parking spots walking to? Okay. If I was to block off my property on that corner, coming out of Fletcher Way is impossible. Going into Fletcher Way is impossible, right? The city has a traffic concern on that intersection. I heard last meeting that they weren't sure where all the accidents were on that. I can tell you, 99.9% of all the accidents are on Fletcher Way as it stands right now. You put that building on the corner, and I block off my property, which I'm gonna have to do, right? There are gonna be accidents all over the place that city's gonna be responsible for. I don't know what more I can say. It's not a good plan for that property. Having said that, if you approve this, you're gonna set a precedence. My property is double the size, and I can foresee a property just like that, double the size of my property. So thank you for the increase in value of my property. All right, it's not a good plan. It's not a good plan for the neighborhood. I can't see it happening. The sidewalk is a major concern. They had an informational meeting. I brought up the concerns of the sidewalks. They're not ADA approved. They have raised curbs at both ends. They don't go anywhere. All right, where are these people going? Right? The staff never approached me after the informational meeting or the last meeting. The builder or developer never approached me. I don't know why. Because it's not their problem. It doesn't involve their property. It does involve their property. They have people coming out of there. They're gonna get killed. Right? And the city has to take responsibility for that. It is a major, major concern. It's a safety concern, right? You have to look at the sidewalks. The sidewalks don't go anywhere, right? They never, ever plowed. They never have been plowed. Even if they are plowed now, they don't go anywhere. Where are these people going? I understand there's a zoning ordinance that allows no parking. I get it. It shouldn't be, but I get it. That's what it says right now. Yeah, you don't have to have parking to build that building. I get what you're saying. You don't have to, but you should, right? And if you don't, and something happens, who's taking responsibility for it? I'm not gonna take the liability of these people crossing that intersection, going onto my property, slipping and falling and suing me. It's not gonna happen. I will put up signs, private property. I will put up boundary on that there. I don't know where that sidewalk's gonna go.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Varley, please.
I guess I'm not really following your argument about the sidewalks. I mean, why wouldn't, coming from the subject property, you know, looking at that image here, cross Dearborn to that sidewalk, then cross East Otterson to another sidewalk, which, I mean, it looks,
Look at the
best as I
property
can
line.
tell,
Look
that-
look at my property line. Where does it go? That sidewalk is within my property line.
I mean, I think the sidewalk's in the public right of way.
No, it's not. It's not, right? My property line is in the street.
I guess, Mr. Hudson, this may have come up, if I recall, at the last hearing. Was there any investigation into sort of prescriptive rights that the city may have had over time, or does the property line, in fact, extend into the street? I don't know if that's a better question for you, or if it's a better question for the, I'd ask the applicant, but I'm sure they didn't survey the abutting property. But I guess I'm trying to understand, this applicant appears to be proposing an improvement. Obviously, the city can control what happens in the public right-of-way. But I guess I don't know. We don't have a surveyed plan in front of us, and I'm certainly not doubting your testimony.
That plan is their plan, and that plan is what they gave us at the informational meeting. And I did ask the planning staff, when I came in here before the last meeting, is that the property line? And they told me yes. Right, and which I do know, that is the property line. And the property line always went out into the street, and it is paved into the street, right? And it was always best going into the street for getting on the Fletcher's Way. And that's how it was adjusted and paved, so it's safest for everybody,
Yeah.
right?
Alderman Clee?
I know that technically speaking, for all of our properties, if a road were to become discontinued, we technically all own into the middle of the street. So if a road becomes discontinued, our property line becomes into the street. But that's only if a road becomes discontinued. If we were to get an excavator, if we were to get a surveyor, there are true property lines that say a certain amount from the middle of the street to so on. So I don't know if in fact the sidewalk, I believe, is truly the right of way. And I don't think that you could put a fence that would put the sidewalk on your side of the fence. I think you would have a legal issue, and I think the city would make you take it down. Then I think you probably would have a legal issue with it. There's a very fancy legal word that begins with a V that basically says, so if Fletcher Way or whichever street it goes alongside, if that road became discontinued, you would legally own up to the middle of that road. That would now suddenly become your property. That's the way the law would read. It's a legal term, it begins with a V, and I don't know
I
it
understand
offhand.
that, but the road's not discontinued. And
No, but what I'm saying is, because it's not discontinued, that becomes the city's right of way, and all of our properties from the middle of the street to X amount of feet belongs to the city. So if I were to look at my property line, I technically have these like little granite posts in my property that are like 4 to 6 feet into my property. That is technically the city's right of way. So this sidewalk, I believe, is probably the city's right of way, and I don't believe you could put a fence on the city side.
Are you
And
telling?
maybe I think
Well,
maybe
I
Mr.
guess,
Hudson would know
I
this.
guess I'm gonna let Dan talk on this.
Yeah.
We're not here to adjudicate a property dispute between you and the city. Honestly, it's beyond the scope of this board. We certainly appreciate the testimony. I'm gonna let Mr. Hudson speak to it, and then I think we'd like to get on with, if you have additional points to make, that's fine.
No,
You're not
I
gonna,
get what you're saying, but
I'm not gonna tell you you own it tonight, and I'm not gonna tell you this can't be done.
I get this, but
That's-
you're making a decision on this, and I want to be assured that if someone walks across that sidewalk and slips and falls, I'm not being sued, because it's the city's right away.
Thank you. Mr. Hudson?
So I can't definitively say one way or the other where the property line is, or if there's a prescriptive right or any of that stuff. The term you were looking for was viatic use
Yes.
of the right-of-way. I see a couple alternatives, though, if in fact it is the case that you say, and I'm not disputing that at this point. There's a couple ways this could be handled. One, you could grant an easement to the city for the sidewalk, and then you're absolved of liability, because then the city is responsible for maintenance and operation of that sidewalk, and you're even though you own the property, you've granted the easement right to the city, you're absolved of liability. So that's one way that it could be addressed, should you be willing to grant an easement, if that's in case the fact of the proper configuration. But regardless of that, the bump outs proposed could be constructed within the right-of-way. Say there wasn't a crosswalk there, those could still be installed in the right-of-way, and that, say there was no sidewalk on your corner, right? That could be taken away, that it would still have the impact of improving the safety of the one-way. The previous submission of the applicant had a crosswalk on the east leg of the intersection across East Otterson, so they could go back to that version where they crossed straight across to the south, and then there'd be the crosswalk across Fletcher and there wouldn't be the need for the connection on your corner. So there's a couple ways whether, you know, if you're accommodating to an easement, that could be handled that way, or if you're not, then it could, the curb configuration shown could still be constructed, with the exception of the crosswalks on Dearborn, and the west leg of East Arson would not be constructed. So I don't know if that helps. I mean, I think certainly a review of the, going through history of the deeds and trying to figure out when that corner was constructed. I know you did testify previously that the city came in and constructed that corner. I've been away on vacation, whatever, it's not an excuse, but I hadn't had an opportunity to follow up with you, or certainly can. But I'm comfortable that there's a way to address that concern, or a couple ways that concern could be addressed as we go forward.
And the concerns of that sidewalk doesn't go anywhere to Main Street?
Yeah, I mean, we have lots of sidewalks in the city that don't go anywhere. I mean, you don't build all the sidewalk at once, so, you know, you build it piece by piece as opportunities arise. So I wasn't around when that piece of sidewalk was built. I don't know what the intent was. I assume they were trying to improve safety in that area, provide better accommodation, but, you know, sometimes we can provide a bit of accommodation without providing full accommodation everywhere people want to go. That's just the nature of construction.
I get that, but when I rebuilt this property, I was told that when the property next to me rebuilt, they'd put a sidewalk, and the property next to it would rebuild a sidewalk. That didn't happen. When the corner of Main Street and Artisan Street was built into a parking lot, they didn't put a sidewalk in. When the building next to me was rebuilt, they didn't put a sidewalk in. When the parking lot at the end of Artisan Street for the hospital was put in, they didn't put a sidewalk in, right? So that doesn't happen. What you just told me doesn't happen.
It happens.
Alright.
It may not happen in the order that was described to you, and I don't know who you talked to previously and all that, but you know, it is our intention in this downtown area vicinity basically to have sidewalks so people can get around. This doesn't have the ADA tip downs like you noted, and that's
Well, it
that would be an
did when
improvement
I
on
put
this
them in. It didn't happen when they rebuilt it. When I put it in, when I rebuilt that property, it had the ADA tie downs on both ends.
Mm-hmm.
When they came in 2 years later, they rebuilt it, it didn't. They went around the corner with it, right? And effectively took my property without any notice at all, right? And that's not what they told me was gonna happen. They told me each and every property, when they're rebuilt, they're gonna put a sidewalk in, right? And they made me pay for that sidewalk, which I did, right? And I couldn't put into the sidewalk fund because it was in the designated area. They told me it was in the
Sir,
designated area.
I understand your point, but I guess we're not talking, this board doesn't have the applicant or the authority to compel the Department of Public Works to construct sidewalk everywhere in the city where there's sidewalk that's lacking. So I understand your point, but there appears to be sidewalk on the other side of East Otterson Street all the way to Main Street. So there is some pedestrian connectivity there. So I think your points are noted, but specifically, I guess, sort of trying to rein this back in to this application, I think Mr. Hudson indicated he's willing to engage in further discussions to try to see if there's some way to ameliorate that property corner, determine exactly where it is, and if there's other means by which the city could absolve some of the culpability. That's far, and that's, I think, as far as the extent of this board can go in dealing with that tonight, because that's the part that directly deals with this application. I imagine you'd like to give some of your neighbors an opportunity to speak as well. So I'm certainly not trying to shut you down, but there is a limit to the authority of this board in terms of mandating sidewalk and other street construction.
I know I'm getting
Right.
shut down, so
Right.
one last point. Recently, there was a stop sign installed on Dearborn Street in the corner of Bauer Street. Right, that was within the last 6 months. I don't know why it was installed, why it wasn't installed, right? But right now, there's a backup each and every morning at rush hour out to Artisan Street, which is Artisan and Fletcher Way, which is the most dangerous intersection on the street, right? If there is the added traffic from that building, it's gonna make it worse and more dangerous. To end my conversation, I want to thank everybody for their service. My father was a park commissioner in the city of Nashville for years, right? And afterwards, he was a planning board commissioner when you moved to Florida. I do understand how difficult it is to make your decision for the best interest of the community. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there other members of the public that would like to speak in opposition or with concern? Just come right up, introduce yourself for the record, please.
Good evening, board members. My name is Chris Swiniarski. I'm an attorney for Edith Hogan, who lives at 34 Dearborn Street, which is the residential property closest to this property. Edith's daughters here are also here tonight. So I know from reading the staff report that obviously your planning department is in favor of this project and suggests approval largely because this is housing. Housing is a favorable proposition politically in these times. We're not talking about affordable housing. We're not talking about workforce housing. We're talking about plain old apartments. But your city has an ordinance, that's your law, and that ordinance doesn't allow this type of apartment building in this district, plain and simple. Your ordinance designates this the D3 district for retail on ground floors. Apartments are only allowed above storefronts and similar type uses. It's so plainly stated in section 190-20C that you can't deny that with a straight face. In the four purpose statements there, it's actually the only thing discussed in the purpose statement. Each of those four statements is to create a retail Main Street type of district. It doesn't talk about anything else. That's the purpose here. But this application says forget about all that retail. Instead, we're going to put in a private parking garage. And we're going to put it too close to an intersection, creating traffic and safety hazards. As a planning board, the role is to plan for the future and to evaluate projects when you have a discretionary type of power, like a waiver or what you call a modified standard, and to decide in the future, is this the right thing for the city of Nashua? What is it that we think this is going to look like in 20 and 30 years when the applicants are gone, when your planning department's gone? What is this going to be for the downtown district in Nashua? I think it's pretty clear, and I think you'd have a hard time saying it's going to be anything else but a mistake that you can't take back. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about what I've said. Thank you.
Mr. Varley, please.
Yeah, I guess just to sort of follow up on the basic point under the ordinance. So, I mean, the D1 and D3 districts both permit this type of housing by right under the use matrix, right? And
Well, no, they only permit it above a.
well, no, I'm
retail
talking about in the
commercial use.
base use matrix, right? In the subsection 15 of the code, there's a basic use matrix where both D1 and D3 permit multifamily housing by right. And then when you go to the individual D3 description, it says permitted uses, and then the provision you refer to, dwelling units are permitted above the first floor of any building with commercial and or retail uses on the first floor. But if that were intended to be a restriction on what is otherwise a use that's permitted by right, it seems to me that would be a strange way of putting it into the code, is to describe it as explicitly a permitted use. So I guess I'm struggling with the concept of that being a basis for saying the only circumstance in which this type of housing would be permitted is if it is above retail use on the first floor. And as I think the applicant pointed out, if you look at the purpose provisions, even assuming that they constitute substantive sections of the ordinance, I mean, they refer to, for example, to promote the goals, objectives, and strategies adopted as part of the city's downtown master plan along Main Street between Honorson Street and Salmon Brook, and there's a couple of other references like that. So there's clearly a little bit of conflict there, and that, you know, obviously this property
I don't see any conflict at
is
all.
not on Main Street.
So
But
look at it this way. The purpose statements are a very important part of every ordinance. They're actually the most important part. That's why the criteria for a variance, which is basically what this board is doing with its modified standard, have to do greatly with the purpose of the ordinance. The purpose is the intent. They're one and the same. The fact that you may think it's not needed is a strained and legally incorrect interpretation. And there's two reasons why. Your ordinance is permissive, like many ordinances in New Hampshire. Things that are not permitted or things that are not expressly permitted are not permitted. Second, if in fact what you're saying is true, then why is this modified standard being sought? Why is there relief being sought from something that is permitted by right under that interpretation?
I'm just talking about the underlying use code. It seems to me that would be a strange way of designing the ordinance to say, this is permitted by right, and we intend there to be then a subsidiary restriction on that, but we're gonna express that as.
It's hard to say it's
a
strange. I
permission.
mean, the entire theme of the district is to create a retail district. This is a very common thing in ordinances, typically called something of a variety of mixed use, retail or commercial on the ground floor. This is a very common Main Street type of scenario in all of America. It's not
Understood that
strange at all.
understood that it's common to have mixed use, but what I'm talking about is you're describing this as effectively a prohibition rather
Right.
than,
That's what it says.
yeah, I understand that's what you're saying.
Well, by applying for relief from it, I think that's what everybody's saying.
I have nothing to add.
Other questions from the board? All right, seeing none at this time, thank you.
Thank you.
Other members of the public wish to speak in opposition or with concern?
Good evening.
Good
My
evening.
name is Catherine Hogan-Boucher, 85 Homestead Circle, Milford, POA for Edith Hogan at 34 Dearborn Street in Nashua. While I'm speaking in opposition today, I would like to stress that we are not opposed to any and all construction on this location. There are many other proposals that could be suggested in which we would not be in opposition. We often used to think of who might build, who our neighbors might be. My mom would make a lasagna, my dad would go over and shake their hands, as they had so many times in the past. However, we're opposed to this proposal with its dire impacts to its abutters and the changes to the character in the existing neighborhood, and the fact that it will make the community of Nashua less safe for its drivers, pedestrians, businesses, and residential population. We were shown ethics and morals by our late father, John Hogan, by watching his actions as he taught integrity, fairness, compromise, hard work, and to accept opportunities to better ourselves as long as we did not have to take from somebody else. Code 190-23 D, E, and F, paraphrasingly, states that a fair proposal should not have significant impact on the existing abutters. The impacts are numerous. The financial impact of a decreased home value, the only asset to 34 Dearborn Street. The proposal has already decreased the value for the short term. Our real estate agent has told us that we have to disclose the proposal to anyone that wishes to buy, lowering our purchase price. The proposal has affected sales for the long term as we can no longer tout the natural light aspect of our house, the sun porch location on the south side, which will be totally shaded by a 49-foot tall building. The offer to entertain a buyout was extended to Garbar Realty Trust, but they don't even want to purchase our residence as they know what might potentially be going in. The heating bill will increase for this 78-year-old resident living on Social Security who already has a hard time paying the heating bills. The summer months, the sun warms up, she doesn't have to pay as much in heat. Please think of us the next time you enjoy the warmth of the sun. Attorney payments were necessary to ensure that the residents and community were protected from two big entities as they use waivers and variances and alternate standards. We are still not sure of the concession of the 5-foot to 20-foot setback, that it was indeed for us, or if it was so that other variances and waivers might be discarded. The structural engineer will need to be paid to perform a pre- and post-construction evaluation of the property, of our property, as Garbar builds and drives trucks extremely close to our property. Funds have been painstakingly saved for repairs of our flat roof, but have now been diverted for the opposition of this proposal. The solar impacts study, as you've seen, in the shortest months of the year in the winter, close our window of sun from all-day sun to 2 hours. The mental health aspect of seasonal affect disorder, depression caused by lack of sun. By approving this plan, you turn a blind eye to creating a hazardous health situation that will be year-long. Physical health, sunlight, fresh air are key elements to good health, especially to elderly population. Synthetic vitamin D vitamins do not absorb in the body as well, and they decrease immunity. Construction impacts have been suggested to be a year and a half. I think we all are in agreement that many projects go past their expected date. The foundation of the proposed building is to be 20 feet off the abutter's retaining wall. The staging area is to be within the 20-foot area from the stone wall. If there is no impact here, please think of us next time you're annoyed by a very short-term noise and multiply that exponentially and multiple times during your day. Then you might have a glimpse at what Ms. Hogan is going to experience. Please think of us on weekdays between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. for the construction trucks, extra materials being dropped in the morning, and their backup warning alarms on the trucks. Please think of us again from 8 in the morning to 7 p.m. on the weekends, according to the city ordinance. With the word from the builder being suggested that the construction will only be from 7 to 3 is one thing, actions can be another. Potential damage to the Hogan's retaining wall and the finances it will take to fix will only be done from the 24 East Otterson side of the property and not until after their construction is complete. New entrance hazard, which has been a huge part of the opposition for the residences and businesses in the community. There is no safe area for the 30-car ingress or egress near this dangerous intersection. And the least of our concerns, but one nonetheless, is the dust, the dirt, and the debris coming to this property. The community safety issues. The city has designed a poorly offset intersection. The resident and business opposition for over 5 decades and the opposition of the sidewalks to nowhere have been ignored. Multiple car accidents with the current clear line of vision and the 3-car accident this week on Sunday, May 11th, 2025 on Otterson Street, Dearborn Street, and Fletcher Way continue to prove this hazardous intersection. The PowerPoint will follow. There will be a second hazardous area you are creating on Otterson Street, turning right onto Dearborn Street on the exact other side of this intersection. New renters to 24 East Otterson and their children will not initially realize the history of this intersection. I fear for their children. In the past year, cars have not even had access to the 24 East Otterson, as this parking lot is no longer being rented to the hospital, Southern New Hampshire Medical Center. The narrow roadways still do not allow for ambulances and construction trucks to pass on Dearborn and Otterson Street at the same time. There will be hazards to ingress and egress at 34 Dearborn Street for 34 Dearborn Street, bottle gas, and the residents of Otterson. After all these concerns have been voiced, if approval is granted, it would demonstrate to the residents of Nashua that the city truly doesn't care about the residents that have been an active and positive cornerstone for the community. The impacts that directly affect lower income areas in the city do not deserve the protections put in place by the city's own rules. The integrity, fairness of Nashua's municipality will diminish for Nashua's residents as the government that is sworn to serve them instead takes from them to give someone else an advantage. Residents should be aware that if this is in accordance with the city's master plan, that your asset, your home, your business could be next. I'm not sure if this proposal is what the original trustees of the land would have been in favor of, but I do know if they had moved in as a fair neighbor, my mom would have brought a lasagna, my dad would have shaken their hand. If this proposal is not approved today, there will be one heck of a story for the proposer, their associates, and the planning board to tell their grandchildren. It could start like this. There was once a day that we were so powerful as to put forth a plan or to vote to make the community less safe, financially harm an elderly woman, and take away the sun. But we chose not to, and here are the reasons why. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that wish to speak in opposition or with concern? Go right ahead.
Good evening, Chair and Board and other members. My name is Allison Hogan. I live at 7 Hardy Street in Nashua, New Hampshire, and I'm speaking as a resident of Nashua, although my mother is the person that is at 34 Dearborn Street. I'm looking at this more of how this affects the greater community because that's who we are, and that's what the Planning Board has a role in protecting and preserving our community and our way of life, the Granite State Way. People who take on the role of public servant, like yourselves, you do so because you believe there's a responsibility to protect that way of life, to live free or die. In the United States, we believe in the rule of law and also intent when we hear, and justice for all. We believe that no one is above the law, and also that we have the right to a jury trial of our peers to get the human aspect together. As a veteran, I'm always humbled to hear thank you for your service because I knew that I was fighting for Nashua, this way of life. That neighborhood had a lot of good memories. We have homes with yards and kids. This plan doesn't provide for that. It doesn't give that first-time home ownership to the blue-collar workers that make that neighborhood up. Garbage men, sheet metal workers, teachers. So let's start with where we agree. We agree that developing the land will help alleviate the housing crisis. Like my sister said, we do believe that there should be development there. There should be first-time homeowners there. There should be starter homes with yards there. We agree that New Hampshire derives its tax revenue from property tax, not income tax. We agree that there would be no waivers required to the zoning or planning ordinances for keeping constructions of new single-family homes which fit in with the current character of the neighborhood. Speaking of which, my sister did reference the PowerPoint presentation, which was a PDF, which we included in the initial attachments. Could we bring that up?
We may be able to. It is in the board's packet, but we will work to pull it up.
Okay, yes, if
Yep.
you could, that'd be great. Put it in a PDF just to make it easier, because I knew that you had the ability to show the planner's plans. I thought it would be fair for anybody that's at home viewing this to see what does the actual neighborhood look like, because at the last meeting, there was a lot of talk about how there are big buildings around there, and this is gonna fit in just great, and the pictures from the planners show that. So the first thing we're gonna show is initially the safety pictures, which will show the accident, the 3-car accident. So looking at that image, you are looking at the view of the viewer is from Dearborn Street, and you've got Fletcher Way opposite you. You've got Otterson Street running parallel to you. You can see the stop signs. And again, this was a 3-car accident, so that stop sign didn't mean zip. Go ahead. And keep going. Yeah, we blacked out any of personally identifiable information like license plates and stuff just to keep things clean. Now, you can see, somebody made reference, there's a Shaw's Plaza, there's a Shaw's thing, it's huge. The Shaw's Plaza is actually down that street. You can't see it in the skyline because it's subterranean level. A previous planning board approved building on a pond. So, hey, it's cool. All right, move on. Keep going. Okay, stop right there. That's my mom's house right over the top of that red vehicle there. That's the tallest thing you can see in that skyline. All right, keep moving up. Let's fletch away. Okay, so there, if we look over on that way, that's by Bottle Gas. And you can see, is that 230 Main Street, 280 Main Street? 280 Main Street, that's the medical building, and that is right on Main Street. But there's nothing else before that or after that. All the other buildings for the medical properties are one-story and residential looking to fit in with the property, to fit in with the community. Keep going. All right, so what we're looking at here is, again, the skyline. That's to the south-southeast of the neighborhood. Again, you can see clear open spaces. Scroll up. That is to the east. You can see the Massey Plumbing. Again, the tallest building in that entire skyline is my mom's, 2-story. Okay, keep going. Again, that's a southeast skyline, same deal. And then the view for the staging area. The view for the staging at the retaining wall, what I'm trying to pick up there is, you can see the retaining wall. It's not just a small stone wall like this, the height of this. That stone wall is, I would say, about 5.5, maybe 6 feet tall. And that's where those trucks, those construction trucks are going to be going by. And now with the new plan that was submitted, that is going to have an even smaller space for those trucks to navigate through because of the bump out. If, and I'm sure there will be, somebody knocks into, this is a cobblestone, it is not flush, it is the old typical New England, hey, I found this really cool square rock and we're going to put it in here, type of thing. That's going to fall apart. And the only way to fix it is from that side. You can't, it's a drop. So, just wanted to touch on those. Thank you very much for bringing that up there. So we agree that 50 to 100 people require more public services and support than 10 to 20, which would be in a single-family homes. We agree that 25 to 50 single-family homes would provide more tax revenue than one apartment complex. We agree that individual homes are not subject to Section 8 requirements. We agree that Seminole Plaza serves as the supermarket for the elderly members of Sullivan Towers and the low-income veterans of Buckingham Palace. Or, sorry, we call it Buckingham Palace. It's Buckingham Place. Hey, they deserve a palace. They're veterans. And the members of the Shelter by St. Patrick's Church who walk to get their groceries. We watch them all the time. My mom actually will help some of the seniors that have a hard time with their little tote baskets that can't get up through the sidewalks or whatnot. What we can agree on is that we need a development plan which is the right fit for this location. And even with these corrections that we have tonight, this is not the right fit for this place. As an air traffic controller, I learned that this thing called a course correction. If your initial instruction to an aircraft is incorrect, stop the error chain and make a correction. Being able to do so requires a couple of things: knowledge of the rules, humility, honesty, courage, and commitment. If I issued a bad instruction, I had to recognize it and correct it right now. Don't wait. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. Letting this plan continue, no matter how many tweaks you make, is never going to get this thing on course. It will have an overall negative impact on the residents of Ward 7, anybody going through that intersection, the residents of Nashua, and the general driving public. So what's on the verge of happening here? There are clearly violations to zoning and planning codes, which were put in place to preserve the rights of existing residents. As you can see from the image from before, does that look anything like what is supposed to fit into that neighborhood? No. They're all single-family homes with yards, lilac shrubs, apple bushes, or sorry, let's do it the other way, apple trees, lilac shrubs, which require sunlight. All of that goes away. It reduces the services to the general public served by Bottle Gas and Massey Plumbing by creating traffic and issues. They need to make their deliveries. They need to service their customers who are the residents of Nashua. If put before the court, the residents would win because of the points. You cannot break your own code just because it's a convenience or because you really want it. Sadly, I saw this same strategy, though, rolled out when a dog daycare was approved to be built next to my house and when a pass-through driveway was connecting Route 130 to Pine Hill Road, despite residents' concerns. It didn't matter if you were right or if you had deeds to show property ownership, prohibiting development, or had overwhelming neighborhood resident opposition. If you couldn't afford to fight it in court, it'd just go through. So what is the point of the zoning and planning boards? We pass statutes and ordinances to guide growth, preserve community, and protect the interests of existing members of the society, especially the weak, poor, and elderly. We seek to improve our communities, but not at the cost of existing members. Come and live here. Come and live and work here. We're in this together. It's a part of the social contract. The point of these boards is to consider carefully the ramification of a proposed property and if it will negatively impact the existing community, not seek to replace that community with a new one. There are 4 items here for this plan which clearly violate the intentions of the code to preserve and protect the interests of the existing residences, small businesses, and community at large. The question is, who are we serving? Are we serving a master plan? Or the residents and small business owners who built this city? The highest praise is knowing that you've performed your duty to the best of your ability and protected the weakest and the most vulnerable in the face of overwhelming odds. That praise is not for the richest or the strongest or the most powerful. It is to those who stand on the side of what is right. No exemptions, no waivers, no lawyers, or political connections required. Thank you for your service. Those words should be honey on your lips and in your ears, not ashes in your mouth.
Thank you. Other members of the public that wish to speak in opposition or with concern this evening?
Good evening. My name is Michael Turcott. I'm owner of an adjacent business, Turncycle Solutions. I'm still in very opposition of this structure. Basically, all of the things that were echoed today. Mr. Varley, specifically, I felt earlier that you were inadequately able to answer that question. It's not a personal attack on you in any way, sir. Please don't take it as that. Just in that permitted use, this gentleman's expertise is to deliver those types of messages. And in my personal opinion, as a civilian in the public's care, I hope that you consider those things as you guys vote, right? Because I do believe that it is asking for use, or it is asking for this permit to be accepted so that they can build a structure. The structure is going to extremely diminish the neighborhood, quite honestly. And there's many people that have, for different reasons other than my own, that have already stated this today. It's going to impact the businesses that operate in this area. There's 70 to 80 vehicles that move between the relative businesses in this area. The construction vehicles, although I am in the construction business, I'm very sensitive to what that will do to the business, right? So you're choking down that neighborhood. If it's going to be built, I would ask you for additional information about their construction schedule, where their loading strategy is, all these things that are going to go into impacting the actual neighborhood that will be affected by this. A 1.5 year construction maybe seemingly isn't a very long time, but it is if you're operating a business and that's growing in those neighborhoods. So as you consider this, I ask you to really in-depthly think about the testimony that came before me this evening. But as a business owner, I don't know what you do for your profession, but I can imagine in your daily life the impact that this would make. This isn't happening in some offshoot neighborhood at the end of a development. This is happening literally 20 feet from people's houses. And There are structural surveys and things that are need to go into this to keep Ms. Hogan's family safe. And I can tell you the impact to our personal business when these cement trucks are coming down that road and blocking traffic, and somehow there's a trash truck and all these other things. That intersection, just in general, and I've said it multiple times, like, it's just unsafe. It either needs to be a two-way, there needs to be something dramatically done before a structure like this could ever be permitted in this section. So I leave you with this. I'm in strong opposition. I urge you, please do not pass this. This is not an acceptable or permitted use for this neighborhood. It showed in the past, the zoning, it's right on the fringe, and in another district, it wouldn't be allowed. So I ask you, please do not vote for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public that wish to speak in opposition or with concern? All right, seeing none at this time. Any members of the public this evening that would like to speak in favor of this application? Seeing none in the audience. Connor, we don't have anyone on Zoom this evening, do we? No? Okay. All right. Seeing no one else wishing to speak in the audience this evening, I would like to give the applicant and their representatives an opportunity to respond to the prior testimony that you heard. So feel free to come on up and
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Don Bornstein. My office is Johnson and Bornstein. I'm the attorney for the applicant. It's always good to see robust discussion at land use meetings. This one is extra robust. I'd really start by saying that you know, some of the issues that are raised are basically you know, signs of the city's success. Medium-sized cities have been failing or had failed for a long time. As this board well knows, and as your staff knows and has advised you, you know, the plight of medium-sized cities is important, very important to the city of Nashua. And I think projects like this show the success that the city has had with its land use code and with its master plan, and with the thoughtfulness that boards like yours put into projects like this. But with that success comes some growing pains. And I think what you're hearing tonight is likely a sign of some of those growing pains. I do want to point out that I did respond to Attorney Swinarski's letter. I did it very late today, so you might not have seen it. I did only have a chance to really review the letter yesterday morning. We wanted to have a thoughtful response to it. I mean, my take on Attorney Swinarski's statements to the board and his letters is basically he's asking this board to put the general statements of policy that are contained in all zoning codes and basically make those requirements. I heard questions like that asked by the planning board tonight. I'm not going to belabor it. You're well directed by your planning staff on the sections of the codes that are requirements, what your authority is, what findings you can make to exercise that authority. It's all well laid out in the staff memo to you tonight. I'm not going to pretend to know more than your own staff does and that you do about your own code. But I do point out that your code is specific about saying policy statements are not controlling. And particularly these policy statements, because they're drafted as if they're talking only about buildings that are actually on Main Street. And even saying that, they also point to the master plan. And the master plan is supportive of this project. The master plan does recognize that denser residential development, denser than homes with their own yards and things like that, are an important part of a vibrant downtown. And a vibrant downtown is a key element of a successful mid-sized city. And it's a serious draw, especially in today's world, and I think it'll continue to be. And it was also a big draw in yesterday's world as well. Downtowns are important, and this type of project is a key element to it. The 40 or so folks who occupy those apartments will be very glad to have them. In today's housing market, every one of those apartments will be sought after. They'll be sought after by 20-somethings, they'll be sought after by empty nesters, they'll be sought after by people in the middle. And those same folks are the folks who will populate your businesses and restaurants and the downtown, the vibrant downtown that you have now and you want to continue to expand, and that your plans and your master planning and your thoughtful approach to land use design, anticipate. So I would say this project is very consistent with that. And I think is where I certainly recognize that growth and expansion and success can come with some pain, and I think every project does come with some of that. But the benefits, I think, of this project can outweigh that, and that's something for the board to consider tonight. If you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Right. Thank you. Any questions? All right. Seeing none at this time, before we close the public hearing, does the board wish to hear from anything else? Mr. Varley?
This would be sort of a follow-up question for staff, but I think it's probably well advised to do it while we still have the public hearing open, just in case. So I know that we had this discussion at the last meeting, and I admittedly did not probably articulate this well in the questions I asked of the Abutters Council. But I think the way I read the position of Abutters Council is that effectively the issue of retail on the first floor is not practically a standard that can be waived given the other elements of the D3 district. And so I just want to confirm again staff's position that while the threshold provision in the ordinance is residential above the first floor retail, that the planning board has the authority under 190-23D to effectively modify that standard under the D3 district. Do I have that essentially correct?
Yes, you do. That is articulated, that authority to modify and then grant alternative standards is articulated in the really opening section of 190-20, the downtown districts, under kind of the general tab, and that's under subsection 3 within there, basically providing opportunities. One even where we've had some projects that have been developed that have gone through a internal review process, bypass the planning board process, having met specific architectural design standards. This project would meet those, however, because of the relief needing to be sought because of the unique parcel, how the district boundaries run through the parcel. That's why it's before this board this evening. But yes, the board does have the authority to modify and grant alternative standards. The board has exercised that authority on numerous other projects, projects that have gone to court and have been litigated before the land use board. And the land use board has then returned saying that, yes, the board has this legal authority. The ordinance has vested it upon the board fully legally under the innovative land use control statute. So we do know that the board does have this legal authority. It has been tested.
Thank you.
Follow-up questions for Sam while we're still in public session? Mr. Green, please.
Yeah, again for staff, because this is podium-style construction, it's basically, the 3-hour firewall and the special provisions of the International Building Code, it creates like two separate structures. So is this even considered mixed use?
So the building code question and kind of more planning question, I can't really speak to the building permit question relative to the two different structures.
Mhm.
From a general planning perspective, not really. It's not exactly a mixed use, because parking, supplemental parking to the residents, you wouldn't say that a house with a driveway is mixed use. That's essentially what this is.
Mhm.
But that does not mean that it's not a permitted use within the district.
Okay, and I was just going back, is like, do we actually need to provide relief from 190-20C if it's not actually mixed use?
So
Or-
the relief that is being sought is so the C, would be A, dwelling units are permitted above the first floor of any building. So if you kind of stop that sentence there, it's really only, only second story above residential, which we check that box.
Mhm.
However, it implies then that the first floor of the building is occupied by commercial or retail uses. Even if this was publicly available parking, you could call it commercial parking, we still wouldn't qualify that as a commercial use.
Yeah.
The commercial uses are, there are storefronts, that is articulated in this section as well. But again, to Mr. Varley's question, the board has the ability to grant an alternative standard. And we do have examples of podium-style development in the D1 district, that at the High Street Flats.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. We'll go into deliberation. A lot to absorb. So, I guess general thoughts, comments, concerns. There's obviously a lot of the follow-up questions that came to staff just now. This board, ultimately, first, we're going to have to make a determination with regard to the waiver request being sought. And if there's not agreement on that, then, well, that sort of tells the story about how we move forward. But based on the additional testimony that was offered this evening with respect to circulation, with regard to the shade study, do you think at a minimum, do you think the applicant provided the supplemental information that was requested at the last meeting? Okay, I would agree. I think that the applicant has addressed all the public comments that we've made. It seems like they're on their way to addressing engineering comments. So, but at this point, I guess I'm still struggling a little bit with the site plan approval criteria, specifically with respect to ability to coexist. And if my interpretation, 15 could also lend itself to some interpretation with respect to providing adequate protection from encroachment on adjoining residential land uses. And even though there's not an actual physical encroachment, that's perhaps one way to interpret that. But Alderman Klee, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the matter.
Yeah. You probably know where I'm going with this. I'm agreeing with exactly what you're saying. While I know the downtown area has no parking requirements, I look at a 40-unit with only 30 parking spaces, and that leaves at least 10, because, let's be honest, there's going to be at least one parking per unit. I know it's a downtown area, so maybe some people will walk or take buses or so on, but that area can't handle street parking. I know as Ward 3 Alderman, where I have French Hill and people have no parking as it is, that's a lot to put on that neighborhood. And when I look at the site plan criteria, as you were stating, and I look at 6, the demand parking issue, and I look at, as you stated, 15, I think that it's not adequate protection, encroachment for the residents. I also think that it has an impact on the surrounding neighborhoods and the general population. And I'm going to make a statement that while we have the authority to grant this, doesn't mean that we should always do it. And I don't think this is the appropriate time to do it, nor the appropriate place. It doesn't mean that I don't believe that necessarily that we do put all these tiny little homes there. Or maybe we should put tiny little homes there. Maybe it would be a good place to put tiny little homes there. But I don't think this is the proper project for that place. And I hear what the neighbors say. I hear also that we need housing. So as an alderman, I am very cognizant of our master plan. I know how much housing we need. I know how much low-income housing we need. I know how much all kinds of housing we need. I know businesses are saying housing, 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 but it's not the right place and it's not the right neighborhood. So I cannot vote for this for all the reasons that I stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Clee. Other members of the board? Mr. Varley, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I know you both picked up on, the criteria number 4 in the site plan approval criteria. The.
6.
Sorry?
6 as well.
Right. But I think just addressing 4 in the first instance, so I mean, the coexistence, I mean, the challenge I have with, citing that as potentially a basis for not approving is that, this is specifically in a mixed-use downtown district. In fact, we have, and obviously we've got a little bit of a divergent views between the Abutters Council and then the Abutters Daughters in terms of their description of what they think would be an appropriate use, but there's obviously an acknowledgement that this is mixed use, and in fact, the sort of what the Abutters Council said is the baseline standard is, you would have to have, commercial retail uses on the first floor, subject to the board's authority to vary that requirement. So with that sort of baseline in mind, it's a challenge for me to then say, well, and I would say along with the other, existing mixed uses that are there now, acknowledging that there are, single-family houses, there are also, multifamily apartments, there are commercial businesses, so it fits practically, not just from a zoning perspective, it seems to me, within the sort of mixed-use matrix. So I struggle with it, as I said, sort of, citing that as a justification then for potentially not approving the plan. And I think, Mr. Chair, on number 15, and, admittedly, I may be incorrect in my view of this, but I've always looked at that from the perspective of, do we have a different type of use on the abutting site that is, encroaching? Like, so for example, do you have a commercial use that abuts a residential use, and therefore, you would want to ensure that there's appropriate buffering, for example? Here, we obviously have residential use and residential use. Now, again, I acknowledge that the residential use that's proposed here is significantly more intensive than single-family house. But nonetheless, I do think it's different in character than if you had, commercial next to residential in terms of how you would think about buffering that. So, you know, I guess where I would come down is I'm not immediately seeing a basis on which I would be willing to hang my hat to say, yes, I can point to this and say that is, you know, that is a basis I feel comfortable with, you know, to say I would, you know, vote against the proposal.
Mr. Varley, I appreciate, as always, your thoughtful comments. I think I stated at the onset that I was struggling a little bit, so, but as always, your insight is greatly appreciated. So I don't know if, we haven't heard from that side of the board. Mr. Green, go right ahead.
Yeah, and I thinking of it from a parking perspective, like Alderman Clee, and, you know, if you were going to do a place with less parking than residential, this is a good place to do that. There's a grocery store nearby, there's entertainment on Main Street, and then the hospital, so like a major employer of the area and all of that. So, I mean, I see it as a possible place where this could work, and, you know, overflow parking might have to be at the garage at Main Street if they have a car and it's not their primary mode of transportation, but I see this as there's ways the city can accommodate it, and I think it's, again, definitely possible with this plan. And I was thinking of the same thing for number 15 as Mr. Varley, where I would imagine a club or something that's open late, or another land use that's encroaching on, you know, sound rights and other things that the city has, you know, expressly given as a much more encroaching than residential, like people live here. And with the redesign of the street, and, you know, safety-wise, as a third thing, I think this is a much better plan that was presented last time, and starts to really address some of the issues that people are having. So, again, not absolutely perfect, but I think it's much closer. And, you know, being an advisory board, I think that was our job, to get it in a better spot than the original proposal, so.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Oh, Mr. Varley?
Mr. Chair, sorry, you know, Mr. Green's comments, you know, made me think of a couple other things. So, you know, one thing I want to mention is that, you know, when we were here the last time, you know, there was a lot of discussion about the, you know, the sort of access to sunlight for the abutter, and I did, you know, genuinely want, you know, have some concerns about that. I mean, if there was, you know, if it was really going to block out the sunlight, we talked about how, well, you know, what is the actual impact? And so, you know, the applicant did come back and, you know, provide that solar study, and you know, as we kind of suspected when we talked about it last meeting, I mean, yes, there's certainly an impact, and you would anticipate that with a 4-story building, particularly, you know, where it is, you know, very close to this this abutter. But, you know, I think what the solar study reveals is that, you know, there is an impact, and there are probably certain times of year, like if you look at the, you know, the January, demonstration of throughout the day, where that, you know, impact will be, you know, more significant than at other times of year. But again, it seems to me it's not sufficient standing alone, and certainly, you know, makes me feel better about sort of, you know, the nature and scope of that impact. And then also, I just wanted to briefly address the parking issue too, because I know this has come up, you know, in a number of other past instances too. And I don't necessarily disagree in terms of, you know, is this practically sufficient parking for some of these sort of downtown centered, you know, apartment complexes. But I think, as Mr. Green said, this does seem like if this is a you know, location that does seem to sort of fit that mold pretty well. But I think, beyond that, you know, we've got a, you know, a standard in the ordinance that effectively says we've made a policy determination, you know, meaning the Board of Aldermen, you know, that within this zone, we don't want to, you know, mandate a parking standard. So again, I think in terms of, you know, looking at criteria 6 in the site plan approval, it's hard for me to square, you know, sort of that underlying policy determination with them saying, well, you know, we don't view this, this application as, you know, meeting the parking demand when we've got that conflicting policy determination. So again, I think trying to square those two, to me, suggests that we've got to look at the, you know, the sort of underlying standard that was created for this particular zone.
Alderman Clee, please.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate your comments and so on. But much like we're looking for a waiver to this, while we do have that standard, we have to also look kind of beyond the standard that we have. This is, and I agree with you that, yes, they can use the Main Street parking or Elm Street or High Street parking garages. Or they could, you know, perhaps, if the hospital allowed them to use their parking lot or something like that, make an agreement with that. The dead of winter, they're gonna try to find as close a parking spot as possible. When it's snow day and they can't park on the street, or it's a nighttime and there's no overnight parking, and they have to park somewhere else. This is where, and as an alderman who has the French Hill, where people are very close, high density, I can tell you this is an issue. And you're looking at a community that is already dense. You're looking at a community that's already impacted by parking, and you're asking to add to that. That's why I made the comments that I made. You're already putting additional impact on them. And it's human nature to be as lazy as we can be. I'm sorry, but that is the reality of it. So to say they can go here and they can go there, I appreciate it. But I see day to day what is the reality of it. And I have the utmost respect for these builders and so on. I also know what the neighbors have to deal with on a regular basis. That's why I make the comment. So yes, I agree. And I also know what's happening up in Concord to the point where they're trying to eliminate all parking requirements for every zone. But we know right now there is no parking requirement, so I can't say we should impose anything. I'm just saying I think because that there are these extra parking spaces, this is going to cause a hardship for the neighborhood. We're looking at the hardship that this is going to create for the developer. Let's look at also the hardship this is going to create for the neighborhood. We have these criteria as to the effect that it's having on the neighborhood, and that's what I'm looking at, as well as why we want to give these waivers to this developer and so on. I'm trying to weigh both things, and that's why I brought up the parking, and that's why I bring up the encroachment and so on, because of the shade. And you look at January and you could say, well, it's not much. Well, January, there's not a whole lot of sun in January. And when you take as little sun away as possible, you know, January is a very dreary month. So that's going to have an impact on that one particular home. And I know you can say, well, that's just one person. Well, we heard from that one person through multiple voices. So I stand by my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Clee. Other members of the board? Larry, any thoughts?
Yeah, I just feel it's probably too dense a development for that site, for the size of the piece of land. That said, I'm not sure that we have really reasonable grounds to deny it. It's a very troubling kind of an issue. I think traffic will get a lot worse over there. I've driven down that street different times of the day. It can be kind of tough. but I will probably, grudgingly probably vote for it.
No, I appreciate that, Larry. I'm sort of struggling with the same thing,
Yeah, it's tough.
honestly. But I really appreciate everybody's thoughts on this. Well, Mr. Hudson, please.
Sure, I'll chime in since everybody else has one.
Sure.
I mean, I'm looking at the waiver requests before us, and one is to increase a setback from the property that will be most impacted by this development. So that is a good thing probably, right? Then it goes to the use, dwelling units are approved above first floor building with commercial or retail use on the first floor. So if there was such a use, then that would be allowed, there wouldn't need a waiver request. But again, I don't think that would be more beneficial to the affected abutter. And then the other is, driveways, proximity to the corner. There's already driveways in proximity to the corner. The existing parking lot has a driveway. Basically the same location that has the same number of vehicle storage capability. And so and the fact that they provide an in and out, separating the outs and putting it in probably a safer location than the driveway for the existing lot, I think that's beneficial. So all those waivers I can support. So then it's down to, the impact of the, on the abutters. I mean, the sun study, sure, it shows some impact. Less impact than I would have expected, though, during certain times of year. I mean, there's some impact during the, before 3 p.m., I suppose, in the winter in January, right? But during the summer months, there was very little impact during all hours of the day, which is primarily when you might be out and about enjoying that sun. So that actually alleviated some of the concerns I had with that particular issue. Building height in this D3 district, I think are allowed up to 6 stories, or something to that effect, right, in the code. This is 4. So again, it's not a maximum proposal as it could be. We could be looking at commercial use on the first floor and no parking and 5 stories above that of residential, right? So in some sense, it's compromised in that aspect, although I'm sure the director butter wouldn't feel the same way. The property valuation, there's, some discussion about real estate agents said this or that or whatever. We don't have any testimony to that effect. This first, the correspondence in there goes back to November, so I believe there's been sufficient time to, get a letter from an agent or an appraiser or something to provide some testimony. Actually, we had one abutter that provided testimony that might increase his property value. Of course, that's a commercial abutter, not residential. So, I mean, property owners have rights too, right? Individual property owner, the developer of this property has rights, So we're always in the process of balancing those against other things, and I do feel for the abutter that's closest to this development, but I to Larry's point, I think I'd have a hard time, based on the totality of evidence, to deny this on the basis of any of those criteria.
Thank you, Mr. Hudson. I guess, stated for the record, I really don't have an issue with the waiver request. As you pointed out, Dan, I think there's valid reasoning for all of that. Ultimately, I think it's going to come down to whether you think the site plan approval criteria are satisfied. But I really appreciate everybody's thoughts on the matter. I don't think we've chewed on something like this in a while, where there was a lot of different sides to consider. So, but I guess at this point, we're almost a couple hours in this evening. I know time flies, Mr. Green, but is probably try to steer this towards some sort of resolution. Obviously, we would want to take a vote on the waivers first. Obviously, supporting the waivers, you're doesn't inherently mean you're ultimately going to vote for site plan approval. But keeping with our process, we'd like to start with the waiver requests first. So is any member of the board willing to make a motion with respect to, I guess, either granting or denying the, I guess it would be 3 waiver requests?
Yeah.
Or,
Mr. Chair, can I pose a
Certainly.
supplemental question to staff before we do that? Again, I apologize for sort of going over the same ground we went over in the prior meeting, but sort of for the benefit of the board and everyone, I just want to reiterate the position as I've heard staff communicate it and as I understand it, which is that, you know, we've got 2 different sort of substantive analysis that are sort of built in. So we've got a traditional waiver request, which, and I think we're all pretty familiar with the, what the standards are. But then we've got the modification that we've discussed under 190-20C1, and that's not technically a waiver request, as I understand it. So, for example, we're not making a hardship determination. So I just wanted to, again, sort of confirm that staff is in agreement on that illustration of it.
Yes, the waiver is obviously subject to those 2 standards that are articulated in statute, but then parroted in our ordinance. The modification of dimensional, which is the increased setback, as well as the design standard, which is the residential above commercial or retail, those are utilizing a different standard. That is the MU modification standard that we've used multiple times before. Those have their own criteria and is dependent on the applicant submitting a site suitability report. That is in your packet. So your decision should be guided on their responses to those criteria, which again is in your packet.
Thank you.
apologies for my poor choice of words. So we have
Oh, good.
one waiver request.
Yeah.
And then the other, a motion for granting modification of the dimensional and design standards. I think I got it right that time. But I guess we can first start with the waiver. Mr. Varley, would you?
Sure. So, as you said, taking that waiver request first, the applicant has requested a waiver from section 190-209C to allow a driveway on a corner lot approximately 39 feet from the intersection where 50 feet is required by the ordinance. And having considered the basis for the request as outlined by the applicant in their letter of May 5th, 2025, I would make a motion to grant that waiver request on the basis that strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship, and furthermore, that the specific circumstances or conditions of the land would indicate that granting the waiver will still allow for properly carrying out the spirit and intent of the regulation.
All right, thank you, Mr. Varley. Motion by Mr. Varley to grant the waiver from section 190-209. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Would you like to continue, Mr. Varley?
Sure, yeah, I can do that, and I will take, I know there's two substantively different requests here, but given that they're both modifications under the same provision, I would take them both together. And specifically, these are modifications that the applicant has requested with respect to the dimensional and design standards for the site. First, the applicant has requested modification of the maximum side setback dimension set forth in 190-16, and the request is to allow a setback of 21 feet where a maximum of 10 feet would otherwise be permitted. And additionally, the applicant has requested a modification from the design standards under 190-20C1 regarding design standard of dwelling units being permitted above the first floor of any building with commercial and or retail use on the first floor. And again, the applicant is requesting that modification under section 190-23 D, which allows the planning board to grant relief of this nature from the dimensional and design standards. And I would grant a motion to, or I'm sorry, would make a motion to approve both of the requests made by the applicant for the, to allow the side setback of 21 feet where 10 feet is otherwise permitted, and to permit dwelling units above, in this case, a parking garage instead of a first floor commercial or retail use. And in making that motion, I would note that the applicant submitted a site plan suitability report as required by the ordinance, dated November 29th, 2024, and they additionally submitted a supplemental letter on May 5th, 2025, providing additional basis for requests for this relief. And based on that, I have concluded that the applicant has provided sufficient basis for granting the requested relief under 190-23 E and F.
All right. Thank you. Motion by Mr. Varley to grant modification of dimensional and design standards. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Motion passes. I guess the next list, Mr. Farley, if you would care to continue, would be make a determination on final site plan approval.
Yeah, I guess before doing that, obviously I sense that there's, you know, a little bit of uncertainty maybe on where people are heading. So I guess I would just open up to just to sort of get a sense of, you know, because I would be, if you were, you know, deferring to me to do it, I would be making a motion to approve. So if that's not the direction the board thinks it wants to go, then I'm probably not the best person to make the motion.
I don't want to obviously speak for other members of the board, but I think just in prior discussions that we had, I think it is heading towards I think a motion to approve would be the motion to make. I could be mistaken, but I think that would be the correct motion to make. So.
That's fine, Mr. Chair. I'm happy to do that then, in that case. So in that event, I would make a motion as to old business A24-0205, owner and applicant, Garbar Realty Trust, located at 24 East Otterson Street. And that would be a motion to approve the site plan, finding that it does meet the requirements outlined in section 190-146D, and that is with a number of conditions subsequent, which are identified as in paragraphs A through M in the staff report.
Okay, thank you. There was a motion by Mr. Varley to approve. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? Seeing none? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Against?
Nay.
Motion carries. Thank you. I would like to call a brief recess, if we could. We're adjourned at 8:55, or not adjourned, we're in recess at 8:55. you mind giving us the knock? Please.
What I live for.
I'm counting on you. Thank you. We are back from our recess at 9:02 PM. And moving along in the agenda, under new business subdivision plans, we have none. Under new business site plan, case number 825-0058. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review this application and is willing to make a motion regarding completeness and board acceptance? Oh, Mr. Green.
I'd like to make a motion for case 825-0058, that it is complete and we're ready to take jurisdiction and open public hearing.
All right, thank you. Motion by Mr. Green. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hirsch. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right, motion passes. Please introduce yourself for the record, and the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Chisholm. I'm with Keach Nordstrom Associates. We're the engineers and surveyors of record for the project. Tonight, I'm representing Black Dog Builders Investments Holding LLC, who is the owner and applicant of the property, which is located at 520 Amherst Street. This particular property is just over 1 acre in total area. It's home to a variety of different home improvement style businesses. Floor Me, which is a flooring company, Budget Blinds, Sink and Spout, which is a kitchen and bath redeveloper, Inspired Closets, Silver Lake Cabinetry, and Black Dog Builders. If you're familiar with the building, it's kind of like this L-shaped going on right now in terms of the layout. The back rear corner of it's really kind of like a two-story warehouse area that a number of those users share. In total, that building as existing is a little over 14,300 square feet in floor area that's usable. It was originally constructed in 1973, further expanded in 2013 to basically make it what it is that you see today. This property is situated in a very highly developed area. This particular stretch of Amherst Street is very flat, and it's located in the general business zoning district. The site enjoys access from State Street, which is a small street off of Amherst. It's adjacent to Midas, the car care company, to the south, a manufacturing facility to the west, a mixed commercial use building, I guess I'll call it, to the north, and then, of course, Amherst Street on the east side, but on the other side of that street is Nashua Community College. The applicant is seeking approval for a two-phase expansion to this property tonight. The first phase is to construct the site improvements as shown on the plan. That effectively involves all of the site work, the 13 parking spaces, the associated stormwater management improvements, modifications to the site lighting, landscaping, so on and so forth, all the typical things that go along with that. And they're looking to do that this summer. That's an immediate need for them. The second phase, which is focused really just on the building improvements themselves, so that would be that second-story office addition. Basically, if you take a look at the way that this building looks now, as I mentioned, kind of the back corner of it is a two-story structure, and then the projecting like 6,000 square feet towards Amherst Street is really one story. The idea here is basically just to take that second floor and extend it closer to the front of the building. Not the full length, but about 75% of the way or so. That office is about 3,800 square feet in total area. It's your typical office setup. There will be private offices on the inside, cube areas, break rooms, meeting rooms, bathrooms, all of that stuff. The architectural look and feel of this is going to very much mimic what's there today. Obviously a little bit different on that second floor. There's going to be a couple more windows than you would typically see on the existing building, just to obviously provide that particular office space with a little bit more light in it for the users inside. All in all, the two phases in the nature of the request is, like I said, driven very much by the need for the additional parking spaces as kind of the forefront investment for these folks. It's a pretty tight site now. My understanding is that they actually have informal and friendly agreements with some neighboring land users on weekends or days that they know that the site's going to be busy. They tend to have employees park off-site and not walk far, but still just not have, they're not self, serving in that sense. And so they're trying to clean that up more immediately and then eventually provide a little bit more office space as those businesses have expanded on that second floor. So that's it in the long and short. Along with the site plan request, there's a waiver for some of the site plan regulations from section 19279EE. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this. It's the existing features within 1,000 feet of the site. Obviously, we did locate existing features that were pertinent to the design and the development of the property, but certainly not everything within that 1,000-foot boundary. I know that's a fairly typical request that you're probably used to seeing these days. I'm certainly used to writing that one, that's for sure. And, you know, obviously there's full justification in my formal letter that I wrote, but really, you know, to gather all of that information would be a huge time suck, expense, and it just wouldn't really provide a benefit or anything, any practical gain for the project. Happy to talk about that in more detail if you'd like. We did receive feedback from both planning staff and DPW. I didn't see any major red flags in there. There's definitely a couple technical comments to work through. We do plan to address some of those in the near future, and we'll continue to work with all departments moving forward. We've also reviewed the proposed conditions of approval. Don't take any exception to most of them and agree to all of them in principle. There is one we would like to discuss with you tonight, and that is just really the Amherst corridor improvement fee. It's not the actual fee itself. It's actually just the timing of that fee. The driver and the trigger for that impact, it's all based on vehicle trips to the site. The site, as I mentioned, this is really a two-phase thing. This first phase is just the parking expansion. You know, just doing that, there wouldn't be any additional trips to the site per se in terms of how the TIR worksheet is calculated, which this fee is based off of. So all that the applicant would ask that the board consider is just tying that fee to the building permit as opposed to the pre-construction meeting, so that they can build their parking spaces now and just kind of build that into the, you know, I guess the application cost for the building permit for the actual office expansion. Certainly happy to talk about all of those things in more detail if you'd prefer, but I'll leave it to you folks for questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Paul. Questions from the board? Yeah, I guess just anecdotally, I kind of live in that part of town, so it always seems pretty benign to me. It's one of those despite all the business fronts along that portion of the corridor, this is one you almost don't notice unless you have to go there. It's very unobtrusive in its present form. I don't see the extension of that second floor, even though that's heading more towards the Amherst Street side, as being out of character. Actually, arguably with the front that you have there, that's maybe more aesthetically pleasing than some of the other buildings that you have on Amherst Street. Overall, I don't have any real major concerns. You addressed the waiver, obviously. This is probably the one night, Paul, we're not going to grant that, I would imagine. But no, it's a fairly common waiver. But I don't know if other members of the board have any questions. Obviously, please feel free to ask. Mr. Hudson, please.
The request for the traffic huge contribution stems from an engineering request, and the timing of that, I'm happy to accommodate. I have no concerns with changing that to that building permit versus any other time. I would like to add to the conditions of approval the reference to Joe Mandola's letter of May 14th as one of the conditions.
May 14th?
Yeah, May 14th.
Okay. Does that have the reference to the impact fee? Just
Well,
because I didn't see that.
It's double covered. It's in the technical comments from staff.
Okay, yeah, so condition E.
Probably based upon an email that Wayne Husband had sent ahead of Joe Mandola's letter.
Okay.
So it is already covered there, but there are other conditions in Joe Mandola's letter that are comments that should be addressed to the satisfaction of Public Works. So I suppose that is a subsequent condition, is that correct? Sam?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So we could add a J, to cover that. And then, Dan, do you have any issues with condition E being modified? I'm sorry if you already stated it.
No, I don't have, that can be modified to be,
Okay.
prior to building permit, as
Okay,
was
gotcha.
referenced, preferable by the applicant.
All right. Sorry if I missed that, if you already stated it, but, all right, thank you. All right. Other questions from the board? All right, seeing none at this time. We don't have anyone on the phone, do we? It does not look like there's anyone in the audience, so, okay. All right, very good. Seeing no one to offer public testimony, either in opposition or with concern or in favor, toss it back to the board one more time. Other questions for the applicant? All right, Paul, thank you very much. I think you're good. I'm going to close the public hearing at this time. Go into deliberation. I guess I stand behind my earlier comments. This one seems pretty straightforward to me. But obviously, feel free to speak your mind if you think otherwise. So, all right. Well, used up all our energy on the
First one.
on the first case. So, all right. I suppose possible motion regarding a waiver request would be in order, if any member of the board was willing to do so. Cam, Mr. Green, please go.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to grant the following waiver, 190-279EE, to waive the requirements to show existing conditions to adjacent parcels, finding that strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant and would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations, and the specific circumstances indicate the waiver will properly carry out the spirit and intent of the regulations. I am using rationale from the applicant, or provided by the applicant, to make this, to motion for this waiver.
All right, thank you. Motion by Mr. Green. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Hudson. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Mr. Green, would you like to continue the thought?
Yeah, I would like to make a motion to grant the final site plan approval for this commercial expansion outlined in NRO 190-146D, subject to the following conditions A through I noted in the staff report, amending D to include the letter from Joe Mandola on May 14th, 2025, and amending E to provide contributions towards the Amherst Street Traffic Corridor Fund prior to building permit.
All right. All right, motion by Mr. Green. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Varley. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All set. Thanks, Bob. A good night. All right. Moving along. Other business. We have other business. Review of tentative agenda to determine developments of regional impact. Has any member of the board had an opportunity to review the latest projects? Willing to make a motion regarding potential regional impact? Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Chair, I haven't reviewed the tentative agenda. I move that the board find no proposed pending projects of regional significance.
All right, thank you. Motion by Mr. Hudson. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Green. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. checked off everything else except one, the establishment of inclusionary zoning standards for home ownership. Sam, would you care to give us a quick update, where you think we are, where we
Sure.
are, where
Yeah.
we should be?
So we've kind of brought this to you, taken it back, worked on it, and then here we are, I think, draft 3 or 4 over a couple of years. So I think the big changes here are, we were asked to develop and incorporate a formula for factoring that maximum sale price. We've done that. We do have a spreadsheet that we can provide to developers, so they can kind of just enter in the numbers. And that also then proves that the formula is accurate, which is great. And we had some discussion about, bedrooms and the maximum size of a house that someone can buy. And I think that we've done the best that we really can under state law, and then ensuring that, we're utilizing the HUD published median income data, and how those are also tied to household numbers. So, given what we have to work with, I think that this is a pretty good set of standards for owner-occupied affordable housing units that are under the IZ ordinance. I think we do have a project that is going to utilize these. Think of it as a test case. This is the 80-plus units for the Camp Doucette project. We're going to learn from that and see how that works, which is great, because then obviously we will be updating the land use code, and we'll kind of get a second bite at the apple here, and we'll be able to tweak these should we need to. And we'll obviously likely need to update section references in this document itself. So this will come back to you at some point, possibly with just very minor changes, or maybe some more substantive changes that are developed based on what we've learned from this development that will be utilizing these.
All right. So, Sam, just in terms of, I guess, jurisdiction and recommended action, this is a planning board document?
This is a full-blown planning board document. This is not a referral, so you would not be making a favorable recommendation. It would be a motion to adopt. I believe the word is actually promulgate, but we'll go with adopt.
All right. So just out of curiosity, do you know the timing on how this would impact our test case, if you will?
They're under construction.
Okay.
And I think things are progressing.
Okay.
I would not be surprised if we see those issued this calendar year, if not in the next few months.
Okay. Great. Obviously, I guess, as Sam has indicated, this has been around for a few years now. I think staff has been very receptive to the feedback that board has given, including having to go down the dark path of additional math and equations. So I personally feel that we're probably at as good a point as we can be this far along into the process. Is it perfect? Perhaps not. Is it going to be amended? As Sam indicated, more than likely, that's going to happen. But if upon staff recommendation, this is sort of the best that we have after a long undertaking, I'd be willing to personally support it. But I don't know if other board members had other thoughts on the matter. Alderman Clee?
Just at a very high level, what is the differences from what we had approved originally, from the original inclusionary zoning? And the Camp Doucette is 80 units, so it's less than 100 units, so it would fall within the, so that falls within what, the 15%? Is that correct?
I believe, off the top of my head, I believe you're right.
Yeah.
So this is a separate document. These
Right.
are standards for like the construction of the buildings and the level of finish and what needs to be included.
Right.
This is not about percentage of affordability relative to area and income or percentage of affordable units that need to be in the development. That is the ordinance.
Right.
The ordinance then instructs the planning board to promulgate these standards relative to, you know, the finer details of the housing type and development.
May I?
Oh, please, yes, continue.
Thank you. Now my brain is going back. My original concern when we first started talking about this was the quality of the unit and the smaller room and so on. I think I had talked to you about that, was that we would have smaller bedrooms and we would have a smaller footprint and so on. Does that, without me having to try to get very technical, because I did look at all of the L2 and length and so on, are we creating that? We're not creating in other words, we're not gonna say, okay, these low-income units are gonna be so much smaller footprint. Like an ADU, it has to be 800 square feet. Are we doing that for these low-income, saying that they're gonna be a smaller square footage, or are we doing, or are we?
So we're kind of creating a window, a range, if you will. Not expressly in the sense that, you know, it has to be X square footage and Y square footage, and you have to land between there. No. There are provisions for bedrooms to be slightly smaller, but not significantly different from those within the market rate homes. There is a recognition that, you know, building costs are what building costs are. And in order to get these units actually built, there may need to be concessions made by this ordinance to allow the developers to downsize. However, when you're building multiple homes, 80 homes at scale, it may actually cost more to change the plans. So we may not even see it, but we're providing that flexibility, but we're also kind of, you know, providing a little bit of a floor where, no, you can't, you know, build a 50 square foot bedroom. You know, so there are some protections as well.
May I just want
Please.
And if I'm not mistaken, they can use different materials.
Yes.
So they could use linoleum flooring versus hardwood or something like that. That would be acceptable within that. They could use veneer versus marble.
Durable
countertops.
materials.
Right, durable materials, which is, I'm fine with all that. But, so that's a type of thing that they can do differently. Thank you.
Dan, please.
Does this include ADUs?
That's an interesting question. ADUs are not really a part of the IZ, and I'll tell you why. IZ units, if you're utilizing the inclusionary zoning ordinance, the IZ units are essentially bonus. Right now, you can only have one ADU on a lot. You cannot get bonus affordable ADUs. Like it wouldn't be built in that way. And ADUs are only allowed in association with single-family homes, which are only allowed on their own lots. So the relation, like an ADU can only be one ADU on a lot with a single-family home. Therefore, you don't have the unit count for IZ to kick in. So they would never touch under our current code.
Thank you. Please, yep.
IZs have to be over 10 units, correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions from the board? Seeing none, would any member of the board be willing to make a motion for adoption? Or if you're feeling for fancy promulgation?
Promulgate. I can't even say the word. I would just have to say what he said.
Alderman Clee?
I'll make a motion for adoption.
All right. right, so there's a motion from Alderman Clee for adoption of, I guess, all right, is there a second?
I will second.
Second by Mr. Barley. Discussion? Sam, do we need to be more specific, just in terms of adoption of the,
Of inclusionary zoning standards.
okay.
Let me pull the title just to see if
It
that,
says guidelines in
it says guidelines,
on the second page of this, yeah.
inclusionary zoning guidelines
Ordinance,
for ownership housing.
Implementation standards, yeah, I guess it depends on where you're looking.
All right, well, I will take it for what it is. I won't,
This
this document that we're all staring at right now.
The inclusionary zoning standards for home ownership.
Oh, okay, all right, well, I took that.
Establishment of.
I took that as Alderman Clee amending her motion, so is there a second on, a second by Mr. Green? All right, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Sam, thank you and staff for your efforts on that, so. I think, last couple of things, a couple of discussion items. Sam, did you wanna plug away for the, Plan New Hampshire event?
Sure, I'll plug the event on the 19th, which is next Monday. It's looking like great weather, which is gonna be really nice. Not too hot, not too cold, no rain, because we're doing a walking tour. It begins with a panel discussion at the Center for the Arts. We have representation from Business and Economic Affairs, the Director of Planning up there, as well as Liz Hannum, our Economic Development Director. We have two individuals from GZA, so the geotechnic perspective. I may be forgetting another, but basically panel discussions about planning and development in relatively uncertain times and how the role of public-private partnerships come into play to make great projects happen. So 2-hour panel discussion, and then we'll do a walking tour around some of the projects in the downtown, many of which have been public-private partnerships, and then we'll end at Rambling House for a bit of a social hour.
Excellent.
What
Thank
time is
you.
it?
It begins at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. It says 1 to 6.
1 to
right?
6.
Links are in the agenda. But Connor, if you want to plug the charrette, Connor's been working very hard on it.
Yes, so the panel is a good opportunity to kind of give introduction to the Milliard Design Charrette, which will take place at the end of the month. It's a 2-day event, the 30th and 31st. It's very public-driven. We'll have 2 brainstorming workshops, we're calling it, where we'll have, we're inviting community members to meet and collaborate with Plan New Hampshire consultants. It's a mix of, it's a cohort of architects, engineers, and urban design professionals to draft design ideas and concepts and cohesive planning of the Milliard as we look to kind of redevelop that area. And there's also going to be a presentation that Saturday. Our, I guess, outreach has begun, and so feel free to share this amongst your network. We're trying to get a good turnout. And Bob and Adam, I've yet to formally invite you, but you are invited to a leadership meeting as well that will take place, so be on the lookout for that.
Is it on those dates?
Friday.
It'll be
Friday.
My sister-in-law is getting married actually on Saturday the 30th.
So you're free.
The rehearsal dinner is Friday, so.
Oh, it's in the morning, don't worry.
Oh, well. I
You'll be
appreciate the
forgiven.
invitation and the heads up. I will do whatever I can, but Scout's honor that I may have a legitimate out, so.
Understood.
But thank you. All right. Well, again, thank you, gentlemen, for the work you've put into those. So I guess just keeping things moving here. Final thoughts? No? Well, I think we'd be looking for a motion to adjourn. Mr. Green?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And we are adjourned at 9:31.